And when we say we're working outside of the office, let's please say remote work, working remotely, off-site work, or working off-site, not working from home. And it's okay if you want to give me an eye roll. The reason for this is really specific. Number one, this is temporary for a lot of people. Some people do it full time. We're really addressing the temporary situation. This holds true if people do it full time. So remote work means you are doing your work, you're in a work mindset, a professional mindset, and you happen to be doing it away from the office. If we say work from home, it really implies that we're at home doing home things and we happen to be sprinkling in work. It changes our entire mindset, our energy, and the way people perceive us. So that simple concept, you might have noticed Kelly said it earlier, of the first day of working remotely really puts you in that position that's empowering for all of us. So please make that shift if you haven't, and encourage your team members to do so out of respect for what they're contributing. So that's first things first. Our goal in this next 30, 40 minutes, and we have time for questions, is to assist you in this temporary time of working so that you can be centered and successful as much as possible. Because it can be disturbing and disruptive, and we want it to be centering and then continue to give you success. So hopefully you like that goal, because here's what we're going to cover today. And as our look ahead is strategies or setup. So how do you set up your office that is remote, habits to follow, and do's and don'ts. Some of you may have seen I've done a podcast on do's and don'ts, and I write for Tampa Bay Business and Wealth magazine, but there's also an article there. So there's a lot of resources for you right now, and thank you for joining us through the South Tampa Chamber. So here we go into our agenda, strategies for setup. I'm going to cover idealistic first and then realistic. And so let's jump in there. Idealistic, take a deep breath, because this is for everyone if you're going to do it long term. I'm sharing it because it's great for you to get to see what would be ideal in case this goes longer, or through this experience, you come up with an agreement that you do remote work on a regular basis. So ideally, you would have a desk. You would have an ergonomic desk chair, not just a regular desk chair, right? Strong Wi-Fi connection. Adequate lighting, and natural lighting is great because it also gives you a bit of that vitamin D, and for our video conferencing, it's nice. Notepad and pens, noise canceling headphones that we heard about earlier, a calendar, and then a coffee maker and a fridge. I mean, who wouldn't love that in your office? Whiteboard or chalkboard, a filing cabinet, organization system, printer, plants, and yes, inspiring and calming elements. That's a lot, right? And it might make you feel like you have to be this woman who's juggling everything. The point is that's idealistic. And now let's move to realistic. And when I come to these realistic things, I'm going to shift from the PowerPoint so that you can see me. So I'll stop the share and I'll be able to see you as well, and give you some things that are very realistic. So if you're not able to get a plant and an ergonomically correct chair right now, it's okay. Instead, for setup, ensure that you do have a dedicated space for your office work, for your remote work. What I mean by that is, if it's a table and chairs, if it's a portion of your kitchen table, if it's something you've set up that's a card table, that's all okay. Make sure, please, for your own mental well-being, that it is dedicated and that you do not let the work spread out throughout your home. Now, I've been remotely working on and off, mostly on, since I was 23. And I can tell you that one of the things that I share with clients and friends is the great thing about working remotely is it's always there. And the horrible thing about working remotely is it's always there. What you want to do is really segment that. And it's okay if it's a corner, whatever it is, but designate that and call it your office. Next, when you call it your office, make sure it's that workspace, that you do have things there that are comfortable. And I get that a card table and chairs may not be wonderful, but give it cushion, do some things that feel good for you, because you don't want to be in a temporary situation with continued discomfort because you will start to dislike what you may have enjoyed in the past, your work. So with that dedicated space, make sure that you have some boundaries on it, and we're going to get back to some of those things. So I can see a lot of your wonderful faces, and if you're nodding, I see that you're following along. I love seeing you guys nod on here. So those are what's realistic. In other words, the basics. Have dedicated space, communicate that space with those others in your home if there are other people there. Don't go outside of that space for what you're doing, and ensure that it's comfortable. So there's your realistic view. I'll share the screen again because we just wrapped up with those realistic ideas. And if you have things that come in that you say, I want to know a little bit more, please fill it in on the chat. So we seem to be frozen, so you may see that sometimes this happens because we switched back. But on the idealistic strategies, we shifted, and if we're not able to get out of this, I'll just talk you through the rest of them. That's okay. But it does look like we have a little bit of a freeze, so we will stop the share again. If you get in these situations, please ensure that you don't get frustrated or complain about technology, because sometimes people say, oh, this technology doesn't really work. And it really does. It's just we get a little bit irritated or annoyed if it doesn't work exactly how we want. See, we're right back to realistic. So if you get that, just say, oh, please wait a moment, give it a shot, and if it doesn't work, be prepared to do it a different way, just like what just happened, and that wasn't planned. So now let's look at some habits to follow as our second agenda item, and I'll give you some simple habits. Simple doesn't mean easy, and respecting that we all have a little bit of different pressure on us right now, I'll stick with simple, and then we'll go to some more challenging habits. So as we look at those challenging habits, it seems like here we go. Simple habits, keep your traditional sleep schedule. And I can see a few of you. I know some of you are going, you're not on vacation. We are in a different situation, but one of the best things you can do for yourself, mentally, physically, and emotionally is keep that sleep, because sleep really nourishes us. And yes, it does contribute to our work. Stay true to your routine as much as possible. The good news, you don't have a commute. So you have, quote unquote, a little bit of different time in the day. I'll share a little bit about what you may want to do with that. Next, have office hours. Go to work. That space we just talked about, make sure you go to that space. Now, you're not chained to this desk or this table. I don't mean it that way, but think about, you don't have to be there at crazy hours, but instead go to your office, realize that you're going to have some experiences during the day, you're going to take breaks, we'll get to that, and then take those breaks like you did in the past. So if you used to go get a second cup of coffee or get water 10 times a day like I do, then do those things. And it can be a challenge for some of us to not feel, quote unquote, guilty about leaving that space. But it's okay, because if you were at work, you would leave, you'd go talk to other people, and you would get that bit of a break. So those are the simple habits to follow. Now some challenging habits. Again, I'm going to switch back and giving you an example of, if you're running a meeting, you may in fact want to do that so people get to see you in a different way and see something such as PowerPoint. A few of the more challenging habits I'm encouraging you to embrace is, are you ready for it? Shower, dress, and be ready for work. Respecting, thanks Mark. Mark, give me thumbs up. Respecting, some of you are not showing us your face simply because you just choose not to. I'm guessing some of you are in sweatpants with your hair pulled back in a ponytail, maybe not some of you guys, Ed. At the same time, if you wouldn't go into your work the way you are, then don't go into your home office that way. And you may think that seems extreme. What it's doing is this is temporary, and even if you work at a distance or remotely a lot, what it does is it gets you in that work mode. It's not saying dress up differently, it's saying be in that whole presentation. I say how you present is how you are remembered, and you do want to have yourself available for a video call at any time, because because people are craving connection right now. So instead of a simple phone call, which is better than a text or an email, think about offering that as video. We don't have to be perfect. We just want to be perfectly connected with other people. Next, eat what I call healthfully for you. Some of you know I have a lot of food allergies. So what you may see as healthy, it may be in my food allergies. So I say health-minded or healthily. In other words, please don't use this as some of us do over the holidays, like, oh, it's the holidays, you know, have a little extra, a little extra. Well, a little extra becomes a little extra, becomes a little extra. Next thing you know, you shower, you can't fit into those clothes. And I joke a little bit about it. It's not about weight. It's about feeling good. So don't really change a lot of that unless you're doing something that's going to serve your body even better right now. Because when you're working remotely, you can be tempted to do some things that are different that will add up and may drain your energy, not really give you energy. That box of Girl Scout cookies that's in the freezer, please don't eat it all at one time. And again, I mentioned these are the more challenging ones. Practice gratitude. Something you can do, and maybe you already do it, is when you first get into your office space, is record what you're grateful for. A lot of us feel right now like things have been quote unquote taken away from us, when in fact we can be grateful that we still have some of these opportunities, including work to deliver and people who we get to see. So even if your list is short, strive to have at least 5 things on there, experiences or people. And then one of the ones that is so important is keep, or get, if you didn't have one, but keep your sense of humor. Keep your sense of humor. You're going to laugh at yourself, some other things. And when we have tension and we get reactive, we tend to lose that sense of humor. So in a state of tension, if we remind ourselves, even if you ask Siri or Alexa to tell you one of those silly jokes, get yourself to smile and laugh. And not at anyone's expense, just so that you are in that mode. I'm going to touch on this and come back to it later. Resist what I call getting into that social media darkness, where a lot of people are very concerned now, and that's okay. It's just we can spiral into that. Even some music that can be played, it's usually uplifting. Watch that it's not bringing you down. So those are some of our more challenging habits to make sure we get into. Let's see how we do with changing off from the share this time. We may or may not end up having it go right back. Let's see. So if we can share on here, we got it back. So here we go. We are on the do's and don'ts. I'm seeing from people's faces you're still chiming in, so that's good, and giving some pleasant nods. So here are some do's and don'ts for us, and that includes the team member and the manager side. So if you're a manager, leader, whatever your title is, if you have people who you're really tending to, then you're going to do both. So team member do's and don'ts. We don't want the team members to feel like this picture where it's just exhausting. So as we look at these, do make a schedule and stick with it. Doesn't mean you have to be rigid. Schedules aren't meant to be confining. They're more about giving you order and feeling good about what you're doing. And so with that, then the don't is make sure that you don't ignore standing meetings or calls. Guess what? Unless you're on a call, people know right now that you're just ignoring them. So some of those habits we've had, we may want to change. But if you have a standing meeting, don't think, oh, because of what's happening in our country, I thought it was canceled. Make sure you're being true to those, especially if they're reviews, if you have feedback sessions. We want that right now. I mentioned we're craving that connection. Do be available and share via out of office. If you're conducting school or other things remotely as well, pick some time frames, and with that schedule, set up your out of office to share times that you'll be getting back with people. This is a good habit regardless of remote or not, but it's an option for you to do right now, especially. Most of us use a version of Microsoft Office, and you can set that up for internal and external or only one or the other. So don't steal time from your employer. And what I mean by that is don't act like you're working if you're not. We're in special circumstances, so having that conversation and knowing when you're scheduling things alleviates that sense of guilt or wondering if you're doing the right thing. So don't put yourself in a position where you feel bad about it. Use technology well and make sure you set it up before a meeting. Kelly's been sharing out that she and I practiced on Zoom. I use it a lot because a lot of my clients enjoy it, and it was new to the chamber, but she took the time to really get comfortable with it. And then don't rely solely on technology. It fails, things go wrong. And the other thing is, I'll mention later too, is we get technology fatigue when we're working remotely if we're used to being around people. So we really want to make sure that we call, and if we use some technology a little different on our phone, like FaceTime, make sure that you do that outside of your office so that personal time doesn't get mixed in. Take breaks, stretch and walk, I mentioned that. If you can use your commute time differently, this would be a good time to get that movement in for your body because you're not going to likely get as much right now. And you just don't want to do social media and housework when you're supposed to be working. It's okay if you're doing a social media post at lunch, you usually take a break. But what I mean is don't trick yourself into thinking that, oh, I'll just look for a minute and we end up in there for an hour. Plus, a lot of it's not positive right now. Keep your work contained, like as I mentioned, so just don't use your entire home and turn off your office. It's good if you have the laptop and you have a lamp, you have anything, and really truly shut it down when you're done. And please don't think it's good to be a 24/7 available. A lot of people, and I speak on generations a lot of people in Generation X feel as though the more time they put in, the more rewarded they're going to be. They end up burning themselves out. And this happens a lot remotely because there's a sense of proving, but that you're not a better person for any of us in any gender or any generation if we just burn ourselves out and work so much that we're exhausted. On the do side, use words like I want, I will, and I am when you're talking about moving forward, because we want to replace those instead of saying I need to or I have to. Let me give you an example here. Instead of saying, oh, I have to get on this video conference, say, I want to learn about what's happening with our company, so I am getting on this video conference. That's some self-talk. It's also how you talk to the people who happen to be in that remote location with you, if there are any people. Please know, though, that if you're alone, it's still important, and even sometimes more so, how we talk to ourselves about our actions. And then share your boundaries with your family. And even the four-legged ones or the furry ones or the ones with wings. I know that sounds crazy, but think about what will you do with them, because hope is not a strategy. If we just I hope that Daisy and Lexi don't come in on this call. They have, believe me, they're in air conditioned and relaxed and having fun. So just don't figure that anything goes in a crisis. Number one, we don't have to be in a crisis in our remote work. Things are happening that are very uncomfortable around us. We can only control what we can control. So we don't want to act as though this is a crisis, so everything goes away. Instead, we want to keep these regiments and boundaries for us and for other people to be respectful. So those are team member do's and don'ts. And then be aware of any requests for you. You may think, oh, I'm working remotely. I'd like 2 screens, and I'd like this beautiful chalkboard and whiteboard that I mentioned early for the ideal scenario. The reality is your companies are under a lot of stress and pressure. So be aware of what you're requesting right now and see if there are ways that you can cut back on your requests simply because you are part of that team attempting to make things move forward. And just don't complain about your company. I know companies, they're made up of people and people aren't perfect. It's not a great time to send out one of those quick rants on YouTube or Instagram or anywhere else because you're frustrated. Because the likelihood is your leader or your company is attempting to figure this all out too. So let's not add to that. Absolutely have a conversation with them, but don't necessarily make it public because we're going to move forward with this. So now the manager's do's and don'ts. You might have seen something like this, right? There's no hyphen in micromanager. But you can imagine the overriding message here is be mindful. People are in a different place right now. So a do, let people know you care. And it doesn't mean you're going to get into their business or have to get into really, really uncomfortable things, but just tell them it's okay if you say, I'm not sure what to say right now. Just know that I'm thinking about you, because you don't want to be the leader who complains or ignores things regarding any situation, a family situation, the fact that people are uncomfortable, they have questions about the pandemic, any of that. You might not have the answer. You just don't want to complain yourself or ignore it. You've got friends and family who you can talk to about it. You don't want to make that trickle down that you're adding to it. And as managers, another do is, see, here we are, caught again. We want to think about, in this, get and stay positive in your tone and energy. For some of you, you might say, I'm consistently positive, but the reality is you may be down. You may have been thrown by this. Things aren't working out the way you thought. You're missing out on plans. So shift into that, because you don't want to get impatient or negative. This is likely the time that having the most grace, giving people the most opportunity to explain things is really imperative. Because even though you want to get things done and you're under pressure, they're recognizing it in you if you make that shift. So listen to workers' concerns. Just please don't say, oh, I know, or it is what it is. I've heard a lot of that lately. People just, it is what it is. There's nothing we can do. I like to say, instead of it is what it is what we do with what we have. Meaning, what can we do in our, could be a small way, could be a big way, but what can we do with it? So as managers and leaders, if you start to say that to people when they're concerned, say, what is it that you can do? What can I do right now? Small or large, let me know what you believe I can do. Pay attention to the time of your communication. What I mean by that is you may be not sleeping as well even though you wanted to, or maybe you're sleeping so well that you realize you could get up a little bit earlier. Be aware of when you send your communications. As a leader, if you send something at 3 in the morning or 10 at night, which I'm not encouraging, is that can make other people feel like they have to, because you don't want to expect a 24/7 response from your team. And do encourage self-care. So if somebody says that they're going to do something, do yoga, encourage it. If it's not your thing, please, we're back to that adage we learned as kids, if we have nothing nice to say nothing. Really encourage people, whatever that means. If they read a book, if they like comics, if they like movies, encourage them to make sure that they're doing that, because we don't want to criticize breaks or criticize when social media was posted. You might be thinking, geez, Deb, you just said don't go down that black hole of social media. And you're right, I did. But if you notice that somebody who works for you made a post on social media and it's 10 in the morning, consider that their break. And if at work you would have been a little bit different, then you can address that when you go back to the office. But have that grace with it. Do offer Slack or Monday.com. There are a lot of apps out there that you can stay in touch. So you can use Zoom like we are, but consider others and perhaps ask your team members what they like best so that you're communicating with them in the way that they like to be communicated. And don't adopt this sink or swim mentality. I've really been pleased that I haven't heard this much, but the couple of times I've heard it where people say, well, they just have to figure it out. We're all working remotely now. No, that's not the way we want to lead. And really practice empathy. As a leader, whether we're working remotely or not, empathy is something that you want to practice. Empathy is not sympathy. Empathy means I say to you, oh, I can appreciate what's happening. How can we move forward? Sympathy says, I feel bad for you. That doesn't get us anywhere. So let's make sure it's empathy. If you have an employer assistance program, if you have an HR person who you can reference people to, if they have bigger concerns, please do that. And not just to pass the buck, but to give them another resource, because we don't want to end up letting them know that we really don't care about it or that we're not approachable. So with that, with those do's and don'ts, think also that you want to communicate early and often. This is a time where If you over communicate and you're criticized because of it, so be it. What we don't want to do is say, I don't know if you do. Let's say your company is talking about what's going to happen in the future, or if there might be possible furloughs. You don't have to disclose something if you're not in a position to do it. But if somebody asks you about it, please don't say, oh, I don't know. You may want to instead say, well, I've been in some conversations, the decision hasn't been made, and I'm not at liberty to share a decision. They may not like that, but they will respect that you were upfront with them. When we tell people we don't know and they think we do, that puts them in a mindset that they can't trust us. So you want to keep that trust going. And to wrap it all up, it's lead by example. Please don't forget that people will remember how they felt with your messages and how you treated them long after this is over, and it will be over. But if we're not leading by example, it's not a great approach to go back and say, hey, I'm sorry I was a little bit crazy while we were all working remotely. Instead, if you notice something right now that you've done and you're not thrilled with it or proud of it, just say to them, please forgive me, let's hit a restart and put it behind you, because then you can lead by example and they'll likely follow suit. So those are the do's and don'ts. Now, as we look back, we covered strategies for setup, habits to follow, and do's and don'ts. So our goal was to assist you in this temporary time of remote work to be as centered and as successful as possible. So I hope we did well with that. I'm seeing nods, couple. Yeah, looks like it. Okay, good. I like seeing that. If not, though, I'm going to open it up to think about what did we miss. I'm going to stop the share. We can go back to this. And if you have things that you wanted covered, we can certainly cover those now. I'm hesitant to open it fully from Kelly's unmuting, only because we may not hear those, but we can give it a shot if people have questions that you want to share. So I think Kelly's doing that now. Some are still muted, some are coming off, I see. If anybody has any, if not, that's okay. But if there's something you want to address, like how to conduct yourself in these type of meetings, anything like that, we can certainly do that.
Hey, Debbie, it's Kenneth Young. Great presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
One of the things that I've been doing for years, more years than I can remember, unfortunately, is every hour I set an alarm to go off about 10 minutes before the top of the hour. And what it does for me is two things. It makes me mindful of the amount of time I've been spending on that given task for the last hour. And secondly, it's my reminder to get up and walk around for a few minutes so that I don't suddenly, look up from my, keyboard and say, wow, 5 hours just went by and I haven't moved.
Right. Kenneth, thank you so much for bringing that up. Timers are a wonderful thing to use. Love your idea of the 1 hour. For some people, even 20 minutes. If you're not sure how long you're spending and you want to get used to remote work, setting it for that 20 minutes, each 20 minutes, and checking in on yourself. And then love Kenneth's idea of every hour just getting up. As I mentioned, get up, walk around, stretch, doing those things. Thanks, Kenneth.
You're welcome.
Hey, good morning, Debbie. I too want to echo that. Thank you so much for giving us these tips and tricks. And besides just personally and professionally being able to do this, so many of the things that you just said are really going to be applicable as we transition to this distance learning, virtual learning. So thank you from me. And I think Nate will thank you as well, because I feel a lot more prepared to be mom, teacher, and professional all at the same time. So thanks.
Thanks, Meredith. Thank you both for your service too. We sure appreciate it.
1, 2, 3.
I heard a 1, 2, 3.
I'm assuming that was taking a photo.
All right, if anybody has anything else, one of the last things I was thinking about is, what is something that you are going to do now differently? What's something you picked up on? Let's just hear a few things, because you may have missed something or someone may explain it so much better than I did by telling what they're going to do. So if we can get a couple of people to share that, that would be great.
I often say it is what it is. So I'm going to really work on not doing that going forward.
All right, thanks, Mark. Yeah, I'm just thinking, it is what I'm going to make of it, because it puts us in a position of moving forward as opposed to being stuck with what we're given. Thanks.
Yep.
I'm going to use, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Eugenia, thanks.
I'm going to use will, want, and am instead of need to have that. I thought that was really, really good. And my other thing is, how do I keep my husband from coming into my office when he can't find something? And it's like, when I'm home working, he can't find anything. And I'm like, what do you do other days?
Okay. All kidding aside, I have.
How do you do that? It's like, really, I'm working. If you just look for it, you'll see it, honey. And that drives me crazy.
Okay, well, I can give you some tips if you're willing to incorporate them. So a great thing you can do is, thank you for sharing that with I want, I will, I am, because you guys can see me now. What happens is if we say I have to, I need to, I should, our physical selves actually become very concave and burdened. So I'm glad you're going to change that. And just, if you happen to say I need, just say or rather and correct it. Now with your husband, we could do a whole session on this, but we'll be brief. So what a great thing to do is husbands, wives, kids, other people who are living in your home, in the morning, when you would have had that commute time, consider sitting down with them or sitting up, whatever you prefer, and saying, what does your day look like, and sharing when you're going to be on calls and what work you're going to do. And like Kenneth's idea, if you're going to set it at 5 minutes to the hour or on the hour, just, I doubt if he didn't have peanut butter for 55 minutes that the world is going to change. So could he talk to you at that time?
Okay.
So those type of things of saying every 55 minutes or every hour, I'm going to take a break, you can check in with them. But one thing that I've noticed, if you share your schedule and what's on your agenda, the other person has a better idea rather than, I agree with you, you're working, but he's like, what kind of work is she doing in there? Or he thinks, well, I'm more important, which he is. I mean, people are more important than products, but you want him to know that here are your scheduled breaks, and that may give him a sense of understanding your boundaries.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
I find a lock on the door works really well too.
Hey, Debbie, I have a question about managing your team.
Yes.
So what are some of the things, like I typically am walking around the office constantly, not to micromanage, just to check in and that kind of thing. And also like to give them little rewards and stuff. What are some ideas or suggestions you might have in regard to doing that from a remote working situation?
Okay, Ed, thanks. So a couple of things you can do is you can have a virtual huddle if you want, and you can let people know that perhaps you're going to have 2 during the day, and they join 1, because again, you don't want it to feel burdened like micromanagement. You can also have, if you use one of those apps that they're communicating, if somebody likes something like that, and so it's not necessarily the video, or you start a text, ask people for virtual high fives, meaning what is something you did really well today. You could send those out as well, like virtual high fives to Ed Seiler, who ate his egg without having the video on, and it's fun. And so when you do things like that, it's still keeping that energy. And if there are, when you say give them little incentives, if there's something that you feel comfortable within the budget or the situation right now with Troy University, then you can say to them, oh, here's something for something online like Amazon or things like that people are using right now.
Right.
It's thinking about what's in our world right now that would make a difference. And then you could also implement, I've had a couple of clients implement, hey, share something positive that someone did for you or with you, whether it's a client or customer or another employee. And if people send those in, that you do it. They were doing it each day, but we thought it was only going to be, say, a week or so. But now we talked about each week or every so many days, rewarding them with like an Amazon card. So
Gotcha.
it's thinking of that morale. I hope that assists you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Thanks for asking.
Hi.
Hi, Diane.
Hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for having this morning. It's a good practice for me. I've only done one other Zoom meeting. I have been working remote work half-time and then outside in the community the other half-time. But I wanted to talk to Eugenia's concern as well. So when I share my calendar with my husband. He works from home, and I know his schedule, and he knows my schedule. So he kind of knew when I had, conference calls at home, when I would be out in the community, so we could see what was happening. And then what we would try and do is have like a little lunch on Fridays. We try and spend, some time together to do that. So that kind of helped us. I also know when his door is closed that I'm not to interrupt. And I do the same. I've now closed my doors. He knows that I'm on a conference call. So, we kind of have it's worked out well. I also, during this crisis, I wanted to say, I have little Post-it notes that can help remind us, like you said, just the positive things that you talked about, because we are in a confined space. So I have little Post-it notes, kindness, compassion, things like that.
Right.
That can help with motivating and just being, uplifting.
Yes, and thanks for bringing that up. Something that I didn't share, and thank you, you sparked it, is I've shared with a couple of families who have asked me this, is everybody come together and write down the top 3 things that you want to experience during this time. So to your words, some words come up: kindness, compassion, empathy, being nice. Some people put in their ice cream every day, but whatever people want, and then you take all of those together, and as a unit, whether it's 2 of you or 3 or 4 or 6, whoever's in that group, and then you put them all out on the sticky note, and you say, what can we all agree to? And if you do that, you say, right now, this is the remote work or remote school rules of the road or rules of the home or whatever you want to call it. And when you do that for remote people, they know that now you've created a norm, and they trust that you're going to live up to it. It's a really nice way to set the norms, which I love that you and your husband have done.
Thanks.
That's nice.
So for everybody, it's a good opportunity to do that. All right, any last things? I know we're getting close on time, but we wanted to leave it open so that people could have some social time too. So we'll happily provide that. I'll share the screen one last time, because when we already looked at that, because remember, we're moving from working from home, and we're not going to use that anymore, to remote work, because we know that we have all of these things going on in our minds, and so do other people. And if we think about our remote work as telecommute and using our laptops and getting business done and being mobile, that we really are all in on this together, just separately and remotely right now. So thank you so much for being part of the Zoom webinar. We will have information about this, and we have another one coming up next week. So with that, we'll leave it open for a little more socializing, and if any questions pop up, please feel free to reach out to me any which way you'd like at debbie@debbielundberg.com or at my number 813-494-4438. Thank you on behalf of the South Tampa Chamber for being part of this.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Debbie. We
You're
look forward to seeing everyone again next week. We'll leave the meeting open for a few more minutes in case anyone would like to network. And we did record today's session as well. I'm not quite sure yet how to share that out, but as soon as we figure that out, we'll get that out to you as well. So thank you all. It's great to see you. I look forward to seeing you again later this week.
One thing to note for everybody is that I think it's takeout day or something like that, that they're trying to make sure you try to grab a meal from all your local restaurants and local members. So make sure you don't forget that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And we do have a restaurant guide available for you that we've been sharing out through Facebook, as well as through our Taste of South Tampa social media channels. And it gives you a list of all the South Tampa Chamber restaurants that are providing takeout and delivery, several of who are also offering special discounts and deals for chamber members.